Welcome back. In this video, we are going to look on how to create a step-by-step guide on how to add Google Authentication in our Next.js application. Okay, so we're going to add the Google Authentication using NextAuth in our Next.js 13 project using the Prisma ORM and using MongoDB database. So let me show you the demo of the app. Okay, so we have a simple application. There is nothing much here. I have on the home page, I have the sign up button, and even in the header here, I have the sign up button. Okay, so let me click on this sign up button. Okay, I am just going to click on the sign up button. When I click on the sign up button, a app reloads here. Okay, the app is loading, and in a second you are going to see that this button now, so it turns to be logout. That means somehow there is a user. Okay, let me go back to localhost 3000, and you can see the app is loading, and I have the details here which are being pulled from my my Google credentials. Okay, these details you are seeing here, they are coming from Google Direct. If I'm showing you my Google account, these are the things I use here. You see, I use here the email, Gmail, this one, and I use this image, and these are the very things that it is putting in from the Google. If I log out, if I try to log out here, you see that the app loads again, and this one, the card of the details disappear, and the details go away, and then they show me the sign in, and even here the button changes to sign up. And then if you try to access the dashboard, in our application we have a dashboard route here. If I try to see the dashboard route, so to show you how I'm protecting the route, if I try to go to the dashboard, you see they are directing me to the sign up page. Okay, so this is a sign up page, and you can see here in this here, this is sign up a sign in page. If I click on sign in, okay, if I click on sign in, now I'm just going to show you it is trying to sign me in. Okay, now I'm signed in, and if you want to know, you see here there is logout. That means I'm signed in. I can just go to my dashboard now. Let me just go to the dashboard. Dashboard. If I try to access the dashboard right now, they will allow me because I'm authenticated. Okay, so the authenticated users, they can access the dashboard, but unauthenticated users, the route I wrote here is have a problem. It's supposed to be just dashboard. So now if I just go to the dashboard, you will see that I am allowed to see the dashboard. So you see, protected route dashboard, I can see it. If I sign out here, if I click on logout, you will see that they will redirect me to the sign in page. That means if you're not authenticated, they cannot allow you to be in. Okay, so you're going to look at how to authenticate, how to protect routes, and if you check in our database, you can see even the user is here using, this is the Prisma Studio, showing me the data in my database. Okay, this is the data in the database, and you can also confirm it here in the MongoDB. You see the details that I'm seeing here are the same details that Prisma is actually putting in here. So you're going to see how we set up all this in the coming video. So just stay tuned. Let's just dive into the video. Welcome back. In today's video, we are going to look at adding Google Authentication in our Next.js 13 application using Prisma and MongoDB. Okay, so there is a lot we are going to cover in today's video. I want you to be having your book, be attentive, because we are going to dive into some advanced concepts and very useful concepts when it comes to building a full stack application. Authentication is one of the biggest thing, apart from the performing a CRUD operation that we did in the last video. By the way, if you have not watched the last video where we did a CRUD operation using MongoDB, I'm just going to leave also a link in the description. But in today's video, we are going to look at how to add Google Authentication in our Next.js 13 project so that you can authenticate users who are going to go into your application. So I also wrote a blog that we are going to use to go a step by step, or somehow guiding us on some things, because there are a lot of concepts and somehow you will be needing a reference. And the link to this blog, I will leave it in the description of the video so that you can have access to the blog and interact with it. So the first thing is actually maybe defining the tech stack that we are going to use in this application. So we are going to, first of all, we are using Next.js 13, which is a full stack application built on top of React. Everyone, at least at this point, you know what Next.js is. So I'm not going to explain so much about Next.js. Then another one is actually NextAuth. Okay, so NextAuth is a library that provides authentication and authorization. Okay, so let me just go here and maybe explain more about the NextAuth. Okay, so NextAuth, let me just try to break this one. So NextAuth itself is a third-party library. As you can hear, it is a third-party library that provides authentication and authorization for Next.js 13. So authentication is actually verifying who is this person that is trying to access my app, or is trying to use the application. So when you just go to an app and you try to sign up or log in, and then they take you to your Google account, they're trying to authenticate or trying to identify the type of user or the user they are trying to work with. Okay, and another one is authorization. So authorization is when someone has already signed up or he has already logged in the account. Then we want to know, is this person authorized to perform a certain action? Maybe you are trying to delete or you're trying to perform a certain action. Now in authorization, it is whereby we are asking, is this authenticated user, and if it's authenticated, is he authorized to perform a particular action? Okay, so maybe you're trying to delete a user, or you're trying to create a new user, or you're trying to do something in the app after you have logged in. Then for a particular action you perform, you must be actually authorized. So NextAuth provides all these capabilities that we are going to look at, whereby we can have access to the user, and then we see how we can authorize the user to perform different actions. Moving on, we have Prism. So Prism is an object relational mapper that allows you to interact with MongoDB using a schema and model. I know very well in the last or the previous video we talked about using Mongoose. Okay, so we interacted more with MongoDB using the Mongoose, where we created schemas and all that. Now let me just talk more about actually this Prism. Okay, let me talk more about Prism. So Prisma is something that is going to be really important, and most specific in today's video. Prism, for the starters, is it is an object relational mapper that uses schema, so it helps us interact with the databases. Now, unknown circumstances, if you are going to use only MongoDB, then using Mongoose is okay. But now Prisma is actually something that is standard that works with different databases. If I'm just going to dive in just in a second to go here in the Prism, by the way, you can just come and you can just go on a new tab and you type in Prism, something like that. Just type in Prisma and you'll be redirected to prisma.io. Yeah, so you will be redirected to something like this, okay, whereby they say next generation Node.js and TypeScript. So if you go to Prisma documentation, they talk about what Prisma is, but more especially it works with a number of databases. So imagine if you have been working with with MongoDB, but some reason you want to migrate a database from MongoDB and you want to take it to Postgres, or you want to take it to MySQL, or you want to take it to CockroachDB. So you find that Prism actually works with all different databases, and I think there are 6 to be specific. You find that it works with different databases, and you perform the same queries, you perform the same schemas, they are exactly the same, which is really something that is really good. If you're using only Mongoose and you are moving to Postgres, there is no way how you are going to perform queries on Postgres using Mongoose, because Mongoose is only limited to MongoDB, okay? But with Prism, you can actually use Prism on very many databases and you are not changing anything. You are writing in the same way, you are querying in the same way, you are writing schemas in the same way. And actually another thing that is very important is that you can actually migrate your database. You can migrate your database from a different you can migrate, let's say you are having MongoDB and you want to migrate it to Postgres. You can migrate your database from MongoDB successfully to Postgres using Prism. Another thing, it is type safe, okay? So it uses TypeScript in the first place. It actually does migrate databases. So you can see, by the way, they have put it very here. It covers data modeling, migrations, and querying. And that is the most thing. Those 3 things it does. It creates. You can create models and schemas using Prism. You can also do migrations of database from one database to another, and then you can query or you can perform all the CRUD operations using the Prism. So Prisma is really going to be very important in most of our next projects. We are going to be using Prisma so that we can actually simplify some of these queries. Okay, if you have done MySQL, you know how crazy performing those queries they can get. Okay, if you have done MySQL, you understand how many queries you can write. But using Prisma, we use the same queries that are very simple to understand, and you can communicate with our database easily. So that is also one thing. And then another thing, we're going to use MongoDB. So MongoDB is one of the databases that Prisma supports. Okay, Prisma supports MongoDB, and if you can just go and search something like maybe databases, I don't know, you can search on databases in their documentation. You read about the databases that they support, okay, but they support a lot of databases, and to be specific, as I said, there are 6, okay. They support 6 databases, that is including Postgres, MySQL, MongoDB, CockroachDB, and others. Okay, so now moving on is as we said, this is going to be our tech stack. We are going to be using, we are going to use NextAuth, Prisma, and actually MongoDB. Okay, so here with me I have a fresh installed Next.js 13 project. There is nothing much in this project. I have the navbar, which is having this button sign up. Of now it doesn't do anything. I click it. I have also on the home page, you can see this is still on the home page. I have on the home page, I have this card here that shows this image and the name and email and this logout. Okay, so these, they are not doing anything, and even this card is just statically, this information is coded, hand coded here. There is nothing that is being fetched from anywhere or anything. So it is a fresh Next.js 13 project. So there is no anything that I've added in extra than just creating this navbar component. In the navbar component, you can see it has the h2, which is saying this is hub, and this sign up button. And then in our page, in the app here, we have just this return, and then we have this h2, and then we have also this card here. Okay, so there is nothing much that is going on here. Okay, everything is still fresh. There is nothing I've added that is scary. Okay, so you can just add these ones and you can just get to this point very easily, I believe. Now let's start using start following our documentation slowly, and we'll be trying to learn the things. So the first thing we want to first work on is actually working with Prisma, making sure that Prisma with, as we said, Prisma is going to perform all the queries to our database. So the first thing we can do is actually connecting our Prisma ORM with MongoDB. Okay, so the first thing you can actually do is installing Prisma, and you can install Prisma globally, or you can install it in your project. Okay, you can install Prisma globally, or you can install it in your project. It actually depends on what you want. So if you wanted to install it in your project only, we can just come here to this Prisma documentation, which says here, I'm just going to leave some of these links here, but when you just go to quick start, there is why you can search actually starting with MongoDB somewhere. They can just you can add starting with MongoDB. Okay, so there is here a quick start. So if you just click on a quick start, normally they ask if you have to start. So they say here, start with Prisma from scratch or add to an existing project. Okay, so you can just continue set up Prisma, but the most important thing is I want the one where we are just going with MongoDB here. So if you are going to start with MongoDB, please always read here. Okay, make sure you have your database connection URL, blah blah, all this kind of stuff. But the most important one is actually installing Prisma itself. Okay, so you can install Prism. I think let me just follow what I wrote here. So you can just install Prism, and what I'm going to do here. So on the command line, I'm just going to just get here Prism, and you can say npm install, and you can just put capital D, or you could just say Prisma. So if I install like this means that I'm installing Prism as a dependency. If you just go inside our JSON, you just open our JSON here, so you can see we have these ones called dependencies. Okay, so these ones are the only ones which run in during development. So we just want to put it under development dependencies as when you're installing it. So just say npm install prism, just like that. Okay, so you can just npm install -d prism. This one you'll be installing prism as a save dev. So you can actually just also just install it globally. If you install it just like npm install prism and you pass this g, means you are installing it on the whole machine or on all of your machine, because prism itself is actually a command line. Okay, so it is a command line and you can install it globally using this command, or you could just go and say npm, the one we have run, install capital D prism. This one will install it as a dependency in only this project. Okay, so it has already installed right now, and I guess maybe it has added it in the dependencies, and you can see in the development dependencies we now have prism. Okay, that is good. So next we can do is, since we're just going to install, we want to connect it to MongoDB, which is going to be our database. Remember, Prisma is going to perform all the CRUD functionalities on our database. We can install it using this command. So we have to initialize Prism in our project. Okay, right now I want you to understand or look at our folders we are having right now. Look at the folders. We have app, we have components, we have public, and that's all. Those are the only folders we have, and some of these few files. So the next step, what we want to do, we want to initialize our project with Prism. We have installed it as a dependency, but we have not done it anything with it. So right now we want to initialize Prism as in our project, and want to initialize it using MongoDB. Okay, so what I'm just going to do is I'm just going to say npx prism init, and then the database you want to use is MongoDB. If you want to use any other database like Cockroach, or you want to use like MySQL, so here you can pass in anything else. Okay, so you just come here and we just say we are saying npx prism. So since we installed the CLI init, that's why we are able to write Prisma init or anything, because we installed Prisma. So npx Prisma init, and want to initialize this, and we give it a data source. So data source provider is equal to MongoDB. So if you're using any other database, you can just write the name there, SQLite or MySQL. So in this case, we are having MongoDB. So I'm just going to run this command, and I want you to pay attention on the files that are going to be created here. So if I press enter, okay, it's going to take some time, and let's wait to see the files that is going to be able to create in this folder. Okay, so you can see it has created two things. The first one is this Prisma folder, and another one is the environmental variables here. It has created the .env and the Prism. So let's just read what it said here. So they say here, your Prisma schema was created. So it created a Prisma schema inside here, and then you already have a git ignore. So they looked at it and they found we have a git ignore. And then the only thing they are telling us next steps here, set up the database URL in the .env file to point to your existing database. So they want us to connect your database URL, connect it to MongoDB. The MongoDB database URL, we have to get it and put it in the .env. Okay, and then another one, define the models in the schema, and then run Prism generate to generate the Prism to be able to generate the Prisma client, so that we can actually start working with our database. So they have given us the next steps, and if you check in what it has created for us in a second here, first is the Prism schema file. So it created this folder Prisma, and inside it created schema.prism. And if you go inside here, they have a lot of things they have written for us. First, they say this is your Prisma schema file. To learn more about this, you can go to this URL and read more about it. Okay. Now another thing, what they put in this file, one is the generator. So they set the generator to Prisma client JS. It don't have anything to do with this one. Don't touch it, just leave it like that. Now database source. So database source or data source, they set the DB to MongoDB. Here, as I've said, if you're using anything else, you change here. But in this case, we're using MongoDB. And then you have the URL, which is inside here in the environmental variables. So if we open the environmental variables, they wrote for us here some instructions. You can go ahead and read them. But the most important one, they have this database URL. And this database URL is not doing anything at this point. Okay. One thing I want you to look at it is what they have done on it, is that they are giving us as a template where you have like MongoDB, and then you see you have your password here, and then you have your cluster, blah blah, and then you have your database here, and then you have this. So the first thing we have to do is to connect our MongoDB database with our Prisma schema. We have to tell MongoDB and we give it access to our schema. So what I'm just going to do is I'm just going to open here MongoDB, and I think I can do it using here. Let me simply say MongoDB. Okay, I just simply want to sign in. So just go ahead, and I know you would have an account. If you don't have one, just go and sign up for the MongoDB account. Okay, you can just sign in for a MongoDB account so that you log in. And so I just log in. I want to log in to my account. Okay, I want to log into my account so that I'll be able to create a new project. Okay, I want to be able to create a new project. So here is the sign up, or so you can sign in or sign up depending on, and you can see MongoDB itself is also using the NextAuth here. And by the way, when it comes to while we are just logging in, when it comes to authentication, it is not only NextAuth that can do authentication. Just in case you're using Next.js, there are some other providers you can use, third-party providers that can give you the same logic. You can use Firebase, okay, you can use Supabase, or all those ones. They can give you authentication in your app. Okay, I've logged in here. I'm just going to come here and create a new project. I don't know how many is the limit of the projects, but I'm just going to create a new project. So the project name is NextAuth. Okay, so create. I want to create a new project here. So just create a project. Okay, so I know you guys, some of you are familiar with now this process of creating a project using in the MongoDB, because we have done this in the previous video. So go to database. So you click on this database here so that we can create a user. Okay, so click on build database. Okay, make sure you check into this free. Okay, choose the free version here and create. You don't need to change anything here, just leave it in everywhere it is. Just create. Okay, so it has created, so it is time we create our user. Okay, so the first important thing is the password. Copy this password here. Just going to copy it. Okay, and just going to paste it down here somewhere in the .env, then create a user. Okay, so we come after creating a user, you can set up your environment. This one, put IP address, put 0.0.0.0/0. So this one is to enable access from any machine. After creating that, add entry. Okay, and finish, and then go to overview. Okay, and yeah, so as simple as that, we have created so click on this connection here. Now, I remember in the last video we used MongoDB for VS Code. Now this time we are actually using drivers, so don't click on MongoDB for VS Code, simply actually get on these drivers. Connect your application through the drivers, click on this one. Okay, and then here there is this string they give us here, the connection string. So copy this one. Okay, and then you can come and replace it with this one, remove this one, and let's paste the one we have brought from there. And you can see that it has a lot of similarities here. Okay, now one thing you have to first update is the password. So copy this password or cut it. Where there is this angle brackets for the password, paste it there, just like that. Next, create the database. So here where they have mongodb.net/? here, on this slash there, you can define the database you want. So you can say, for instance, NextAuth. So you can name your database here to be NextAuth, or anything, users, or anything you want. So you can name it any name you want, just like that. So after you have done this, you actually have a database string that Prisma is going to use to connect your database. So the Prisma here is already connecting to your database using this string. Okay, so we have done that step successfully. You can now come back from this side. You can go ahead and close here. Okay, now going back to the documentation. Now it's time to create the models. Okay, creating the schema and the models. Okay, so now that we have set up the project, we need to define the schemas and the models for our database. Actually, if you are going to think about it, the schema we need in our project is to be able to save this person, this user here. Okay, when a user is signing up using the Google, we want to get the details of that user so that we'll be able to save it to the database. Okay, so the one most important thing we need is the user model. Okay, and the user model, you can see it can have an image. We need an image from the user. We need their name. We need their email. We can even also get their accounts. So imagine in the future, if you have sign up, you have seen like on MongoDB, when you are signing up, you can either sign up using the Google Auth or GitHub, or you can sign up using email and password. So there are very many ways you can sign in. So a user can have actually multiple accounts. Okay, so that's why in the schema we might add an account. So let's just look at this schema here. I put here to set up the schema. I put up this link in the documentation, which is from NextAuth. Okay, so in the NextAuth, if you go to adapters, which I believe is this one. Okay, so if you go to adapters, there is where they talk about setting up the schema. Okay, creating a schema. Now in the schema is actually, we already have the schema file right now. If you check here in the Prisma schema, at least we have here already two things in our schema, the generator and the data source. So other thing that I'm missing is their models. So we are going to put all our models here. So we're going to put all the models here, and the most model we want is the user model. Okay, so in this one, what you're just going to do is simply copy, just go in this blog here, and you can just copy the schema here so that you can explain. Just simply copy this schema here, just like this. You can just go ahead and copy these like these, not all of them. Just copy this one, Ctrl C. Okay, Ctrl C and paste these ones. Okay, now let me explain. I'm not going to write them one by one, but is actually to explain. Okay, is to explain. So the first thing we have is the first thing that we have, if we're just going to go back here in this schema, I try to explain it. So in the schema, we have four models. We have the user, the account, the session, and the verification request. Actually, we do not need all these schemas, all these models here. The most important one is actually the user account. But then if you are going to continue with this, okay, if you are going to continue with this project and add something like forgot password, okay, so let me just explain why we need any of these other models. You just might need them in case you want to continue with this project and add in more functionalities, like signing in with other credentials, like with email and password. So the user model represents a user of our application. It has fields like name, email, image, accounts. So it has these details here. Okay, this user model, if you just go to the user model here, let me scroll to the user model. So if you look at the user model, has things like an ID, and we're just going to talk an ID in a second. It has email, name, we have email, image verified, and we have the email verified and image, and then we have accounts, and then we also have sessions. Okay, so these are the only things we need, more especially like these three here: the name, email, and the image. These are the things we are going to be getting from Google. Now, what is the purpose of the accounts and the sessions? Let's just go ahead. So the account model represents an account from a provider like Google, Facebook, Twitter. So you can imagine if you have created your authentication using other providers, like you have GitHub, you have used credentials. Now, if we talk about credentials, is when we use email and password, they normally call it credentials. So if you have used different types of providers, like others like Facebook, Twitter, you might want to keep also the account to know what type of account are you dealing with. You get? So this accounts here is saved to know is from which provider. You are going to see that we are going to use these accounts to know which type of provider are we working on. Are we working with Google? Are we working with the Facebook? Which type of provider are we working with? So that is the purpose of the account. The account, if you look at it here, let's just go to the account. So if you look at the account, it has also the ID, and then it has these others, the user ID. Let me see this one. It has type, and the most important one, it has a provider. So you look in the account, we have this provider here, and this provider is where you have like Google, you have GitHub, you have Facebook, and other things. Then you have these tokens, access tokens, expires, and many others. You don't need to worry about all these ones right now. Okay, don't worry about these ones. I'm going to explain some of these things in a second. Okay, the another one is the another one is the session. So the session model represents at session, and by the way, this code I pasted is, as I've said, it is on this provider here. You can see they have the same thing here. You could just actually just copy it from here also. You see it is the same exact thing. You can just come here and copy these ones just like this. So I don't want you to say I got this from anywhere else. Just they are here. Just copy this. It is under NextAuth, under database database adapters, and choose the one for Prism. And you can just simply also copy this. Okay, and under here models, under these models, let me just do this. Okay, and then let me paste these ones. Now why I've pasted these ones is that they still have problems, and I want to show you how I fix these problems. Okay, now how Prism works, let me just go and explain about Prism in a second. I know everyone right now might be freaking out, but let me just explain about Prism in a second. So in Prism, what you can do is you can create a schema. In the schema, then you can create models. Okay, in the schema you can create things called models. So what are models? So models is going to be it is a place, or it is something that defines the structure of which defines the structure of your data that you want to save. Let's say you have an application. Let me just say here, and this application has two modules. Maybe it is posting tweets. Okay, so you might just come here and you find you have, for instance, a user. Okay, so you will have a user, and maybe you are going to be also making, maybe let's say, notes. So you're going to be adding in your application. You are going to find maybe you have, where you are going to have the users. Let me just say here, you have different users who can sign up on your application, and when they sign up, they can create notes. Okay, so we have like two different models, like the users and the notes in your application. So each note, you can find each note here. So you can find a note can have an ID. Okay, a note can have an ID. A note can have a title. Okay, a note can also have maybe a description. Okay, a note can have a description, and then other things a note can have, it can find that it belongs to a user. Okay, you can find that this note actually belongs to a certain a certain user. So that means at some point you will have user ID. Okay, so that means you must actually store two things. You want to store the user ID. I mean, where does this note belong to? It belongs to a particular user. Okay, now if it belongs to a particular user, we can also store that user. Okay, we can also store that user. So I'm just going to say user. So now you have, this is the structure of your notes. And if you want to change this one to create a model, the name of the model, if it is creating notes, the name of the model becomes a node. Okay, so the name of the model here, we are going to create it, and it becomes a node. Let me just make it big here. And then for the users, the name of the model becomes user in singular. Okay, something like this. So you have the user and then you have the node. These two, they become the models, these two here. So in the users, we can have in the users we can have a user to have an ID, a user can have a name, a user can have email, okay, a user can have password, whatever you want to put on the user can have. Okay, let me continue here. A user can have maybe password. A user can have notes. Okay, a user can have notes because one user can publish a lot of notes. You can find you have a lot of notes or you have a lot of tweets. A user can have a lot of posts. A user can have a lot of things. You get? But a note can have one particular user. Each note or each post you have on your LinkedIn or you have on your social media, any post you meet, it brings a particular user. That's why we have the user ID and the user themselves. Now, another thing that is very common in Prism is that we have to define the types. Okay, we have to define the types of where these things belong to. Okay, now most of the times if we are defining the types, for instance this ID, okay, ID, it is of type, you can find is of type ID, so you can say ID, and then you can also set it to be default, and in default you can find that you can pass in that it's going to be auto generated. Okay, so you can find that you pass in that is going to be auto generated. Okay, just like that. And then the name, you can say it is a string. Okay, you can say this is a string. Email, the same thing, you can say string. And then if you want to make the email unique, you can just come and put @unique. So this is how we define some of the things in Prism. For instance, if you want to say this email is going to be unique, we pass this key @unique. Password, you can also say it is a string. Now for the notes here, this password can be string. Now for the notes here, we know that these notes is an array. Okay, so the notes is an array, but of this, they come from this model note. Okay, but they will not get confused with these ones I wrote inside here. Okay, so these notes here are of type note. Okay, we are getting these notes from this model here. Okay, the notes we are saying here, they are of the type note. So to represent it here, you can just come and say it is note. So you say note capital, and this note you are referring to this model, and then you pass as an array, just like that. So you say it is an array of notes from the note model. Now when you come back to this to relate it to this side, first of all, it is this user ID, and this user ID you can say it is an integer. Okay, you can just go ahead and define it as an integer, and you say int, it is type int. But then you have, where do we get this integer? Because for this one is going to be auto generated, this one has at ID, and it also is also going to be by default is going to be auto generated. Okay, but then how about this one, this user ID? Where is it going to come from? This user ID we are referring here is the user ID from this user model. Okay, we want, when a user is creating, we get the user ID and we save it inside here. Now to define that, you have to define it inside here. First of all, you say that this user is from the user model. Okay, and then you can pass in something saying at relations. So you can define the relations. okay, or the relationship between these two, between the node and the user. Okay, and in the relations, what is most important is in the relations, let me try to move this. Okay, and a second. So in these relations here, the most important thing is that, so you will have to come into this. Let me double click here. So in these relations, you have to define the relationships, and we define relationships on two things. Okay, we have to define the fields, the fields in this one, and you say fields is user ID. You are trying to say the fields user ID here. Okay, so when you say fields, you mention the field, you refer to the field in this node here. So you are trying to say this field of user ID will be with references. So you say at references, and in the references you pass in the ID. So when you pass in the ID like this, they are trying to actually refer to this user, which is this ID here. Okay, I know at first it is not easy to understand. Let me just maybe use the one we have here. Okay, let's just say we have the user model here, and in the user model, you see a user can have multiple accounts, a user can have multiple sessions. Okay, and you see in this we define that accounts is an array of type account. That means someone can be having multiple accounts, that is acceptable. I mean, he can sign up using Twitter, he can sign up using GitHub, or he can even sign up with email and password. So when you sign up with all different accounts, with account providers, we have multiple accounts. That's why we have this one inside this array. Okay, now when you go back up here in the account, okay, you will see that he has to have a type user here. Okay, is having a user, and they are saying here at user. Okay, and here we have to have user ID. That's why you're seeing here user ID here. I can bring this field down so that it is very near the other one. Let me bring it near here. So that's why you see for every account it must have a user ID. Okay, for every account someone must have a user ID. And now how do we define the relationship? So we come here, we define user. So there are two things here, user ID and user. So in the user we say is of type user, which is the model we have already defined down somewhere here, user. Okay, and then we say we define the relationship. So we say at relation, and this one is to define the relationship. And on the relationship you say fields. Okay, you mention the fields, and the fields they are referring to is any field inside this model itself, which is the account, and the fields we are referring to is this field. They tend to say this field user ID is going to come from references ID, and when they say references ID, they're trying to mean this ID of this user. So this ID here, this ID, they're trying to relate to this ID. Okay, I think if you want me to make a full lesson about Prism and actually about relationships, comment in the description so that I can make a separate video about that, explaining these relationships in the Prism. Now then we have this on delete cascade, means that if the user is deleted, even the account is deleted. Okay, this is what this means. On delete cascade means when a user is deleted who has an account, you go ahead and also delete this account. Okay, so that is great. Now one problem we have errors to do with at default, and then they have used this CUID. Okay, now for MongoDB, if you hover on this error here, they say validating field ID in the model user. MongoDB model IDs must have at map ID annotation. So they are telling you what the problem is, and even they talked about it in the documentation itself. If you go here where we're having this prism here, if you continue and scroll down here, they say you can migrate, scroll down. Okay, they say here MongoDB support. They say MongoDB supports Prism supports MongoDB and also does OAuth. The following instructions for Prisma documentation, blah blah. But what I'm trying to say you here, make sure that the ID field is mapped correctly. So wherever we have the ID, we have to put it like this. So just copy this ID. Wherever there is ID in our schemas, we replace it with this. So just go here on the user, remove this one, replace it with this ID. It is a string, and then it is of type ID. By default is going to be auto, but then we map it with the MongoDB ID. You know, MongoDB IDs, they start with underscore, so they have to map this auto-generated ID with the one of MongoDB, and is of type also object ID. So just make sure wherever we have the ID, let's make it like this. So I'm just going to go also on all other accounts and replace just like that. Okay, and I think there is also this one in the session, replace it like that. Any other errors? Actually this this model verification, you can actually get rid of this one. Okay, can just get rid of that one. Let's remain with these three models. So now we have these refresh tokens saying at DB text. They also talked about it here. The native database type attribute at DB string from DB text. Okay, so wherever there is this DB text here, you can convert it to DB string. Okay, so just copy this at DB string, and wherever there is this at DB text like this, I can say Ctrl F, and then I can also Ctrl H to replace. So replace everything with at DB string. So with that, we actually have now very few errors. We have this user ID, warning validating feed user in user feed user, model account feed account dot user ID, and user ID must have the same native type for MongoDB to join those corrections correctly. Consider either removing user ID's native ID. So you can just go ahead and live with those ones. These errors here, they are not big errors, they are warnings. Okay, these ones, they are warnings. You can just simply leave them like that, since we don't have any other big problem right now. These ones. So after doing that, after doing those changes, now you should have. And by the way, here we can also see here in the schema on the user ID, the at map user ID. I don't think we have to do that. There is no need of doing the snake naming conversions. So if mixed snake and camel column case is an issue for you and align database system, we recommend using this at map. So there is how they are mapping user ID to use at map user ID. Okay, so we can just go and also use this. Maybe it can solve actually our problem. Copy at map user ID. So wherever is user ID, let's put this to see if it can solve the problem. And it is not, I think. It's not solving any problem, so you can just leave this out. We don't need this. Okay, so I think that's it with that. Okay, so let's just move on with the documentation here. So now we can just go ahead and run this Prism generate. Okay, and by the way, you can also do Prism npx. So there is where we can run, let me see something here. We can run npx prism db push. So if you run this command here, npx db push, you are trying to push all these models. You are actually pushing them to the database. Like if you do this, it is going to go ahead and push all these things, and it will be pushing them to MongoDB database. Okay, you can see here it is trying to connect to the database. You can see here what it has done after running npx db. Environment variables loaded, Prisma schema loaded, database db, and they are doing all this connecting to data, and they are creating all these collections: the account, the session, the user, and all those things. They are creating them for us. Okay, and it seems everything is okay. Now if we just go to our MongoDB account right now, let me just go and go to database and just click on browse collections. We should just look something like it has created all these things. Okay, look at this. So it has created account, it has created session, and it has created the user. There is no any user right now. Okay, there is no any user. And another thing you can do, you can visualize this. You can say npx, I think it's Prisma Studio. Okay, you can run npx Prisma Studio to see this database. You can start seeing your database in the browser. Okay, it is something I've not done before, but you see here when you run this, it gives you the access to the studio. And wow, so you see here you have the, here they are showing us the representation of our database that we have here, account, session, user, and they're giving it here. Okay, if you just click this, you see you can add a record from here. Okay, you see ID, name, email verified, image, account, sessions. These are actually coming from the schema. Okay, they are coming from this schema here. Okay, so when we add a user, you will see that the user will be coming here. So you can even come and add a record from here, or you can remove a record. So instead of interacting with this side here, they have Prisma Studio, whereby you can actually interact, like adding new records, testing out things. You know, you can have all these things being seen here. Okay, so now at this point, I'm just going to open another tab here. Okay, and at this point they run for us, but we can just also run npx Prisma generate. Okay, now this npx Prisma generate is to make sure that all these accounts we are in sync, and it will generate for us Prisma client. Okay, so you see, to use in your database, you have to use this Prisma client here. Okay, this was to help us generate the Prism Prisma client, and in a minute we are going to see what the Prisma client can help us. Prisma client essentially helps to perform the CRUD operations. Okay, so moving on, for the setup, please. And here I was you can just go ahead and look at how you can perform the CRUD operations using Prism. I tried to put them here. Okay, we'll come to them in a minute. But now the next thing is setting up NextAuth. So we have been just trying to set up the step number 1. We have been trying to set up Prism and MongoDB, of which we have done. Okay, we have successfully done set up MongoDB and Prism, and in the MongoDB we even have our user database created, and we're waiting to save the users there. So now the next thing is now the NextAuth, setting up the NextAuth with the Google provider and then with the Prism client. Okay, so the first thing are the installations. When you go to the documentation for the NextAuth, so on the new tab you can just say NextAuth. Okay, just type in NextAuth and just go to this NextAuth website. Okay, and just click here, get started. Okay, and you see here the first thing you have to do is install the NextAuth. Okay, so just say npm install NextAuth. So here I'm just going to go down here and I say npm install NextAuth. So before doing anything, just install NextAuth. Let me just add this also to the documentation. So the first thing is to install. Okay, so install NextAuth. Okay, install NextAuth. That's the first thing that you have to do, just like that. Okay, so next after installing NextAuth is to add an API route. Okay, add an API route, and you have to call it the syntax for creating this next route looks like this from the documentation itself here. And they are saying if you are using Next.js 13 and above, which we are doing, we are supposed to use in this way. So right click and open here, and in Next.js 13, when you are creating this not this, just here in the guide here. So if you're using Next.js 13, okay, so you have to create, first of all, in the app you create API, and then in the API you create auth, and then in the auth you create this folder here. So I'm just going to go here in my project. Okay, in the app folder, create a new folder called API. In the API, create another folder, call it auth. And then in the auth folder, create another folder, call it this next auth, close the bracket, enter. And then inside this one, create route.js. As simple as that. Okay, create route.js. So you can just go ahead and paste in this. Okay, you can just go ahead and paste in this. So copy this and paste in here, and this is the syntax, okay, of the NextAuth. Now there are some other things that we have to do in the NextAuth. Let me just go to the documentation here. So the NextAuth needs a lot of things. Okay, so the first thing is, in the NextAuth we have two different concepts. Let me just go to here. Let me try to explain the concept in the NextAuth. So let me put here NextAuth. So in the NextAuth, there are some things or the terms you have to get familiar with. So the first one is the provider. Okay, so the provider, these are just the authentication methods that a person can use in their Next.js project. First of all, you can decide to use maybe Google, the one you are going to use. You can use Facebook, for instance. You can use GitHub. Okay, you can go ahead and use credentials. Okay, so when you use credentials is when you use like email and password. I think I will create one video for credentials in the future. So if you're using one of these provider, you have to state which provider you are using. That is one thing. So you must state the provider, and in our case we are going to use Google. So when you just go to Next.js here and you go on the NextAuth and you scroll down to providers, okay, you said they have a lot of providers. I'm just going to go here to Google. So you see here on Google they have the provider, so you have to put this section for the provider. Okay, so in this one we are just going to have here export. Okay, you're going to say export const options NextAuth options. Okay, and this object here is where we are going to put our auth options inside here, so that then we come and pass them inside here. You can just say NextAuth options just here on this handler. So this is the syntax. We have to export NextAuth to be able to use it in our application, and then you export as get and also export as post, as simple as that. Then here we have to create this, the next options that can be able, that is having all the necessary things that NextAuth is going to use to authenticate, and one of them is the providers. Okay, so the first one is the provider, and the provider we're going to use is Google here. Okay, so you can just go ahead and put this one inside the options inside here. Put inside these options here we are putting the providers. So we have said the providers, they are the ones which include, I've explained here, providers, they are the ones which include like Google, Facebook, GitHub. So you have to specify which provider you are going to use, and in this case we are using a Google provider. So we have client ID, it needs Google provider, needs those two client ID. So if you just go here, you see that we have the, also in the next options, the first thing here we have is the provider. So after that, after the providers, you have put the providers here. You can just go ahead, and now we have to create this one. As you can see, process.env Google client, process.env Google client secret. So we have to put these two things, to get these two things in our environmental variables. So I'm just going to say copy this, Ctrl C, put it in .env here. So down here you can just come and put Google client ID, and you can also go and get another one is, where is this? Let me first close some of these things here. So I know others are saying we are taking long to go to the UI. Please, these settings are the most important ones. So just go and set also this one here. So you're going to get these values to put here in a second, okay? But we are still setting up this one. So another one that we need to set up that is very important is the adapter, okay? So the adapter is the engine that is going to connect behind the scenes to our database, okay? So we need to actually connect the adapter first of all here. Make sure in your route you can have to get this Google provider, okay? We have to get this Google provider. Let me come here. So you import this. Import Google provider from NextAuth providers Google on top here of this document here. Make sure you're importing this Google provider. Okay, that is great. The next thing we can see is the after the provider, the next thing we can talk about is the adapters. Okay, so the adapters, they are the ones that connect to different databases. So depending on which adapter you are using, you can see here there is, if you use the Mongoose, you would have to use the MongoDB adapter. If you're using Prisma, you have to use the Prisma adapter. So if I click on the Prisma adapter, they tell you are going to use @prism adapter, and you might need to install these adapters. So npm install Prism client and auth adapter. So I'm just going to click this and install. So go to the installation here and let's install Prism client and also Prism adapter. Just install like that. Actually, the Prism client, they might have already installed it, but just install to make sure everything is in place. Then for the Prisma itself, we have already installed the Prisma. So to set up here, they are showing you in your auth here, you need to use the adapter in this format. So we need to get these two. Okay, so just simply copy these 3 lines here, actually 4 lines, just to replace them with these ones we have here. So we're now going to have, by the way, these ones have also finished installing. So now at this point we have the Prism adapter and also we have the Prism client. Okay, we have the Prism adapter and the Prism client. Okay, so moving on, just put this line, adapter is equal to Prism. So this one is to help us connect to the Prism. So on top here, just simply put this adapter is equal Prism adapter, and you have this Prism. This Prism is this one here. So you can just say const Prism. So let's define the Prism here. So Prism here on top, const Prism is equal new Prism client. So we use this Prism client to get the Prism, and then we connect, use this Prism. This is to make sure that every time we are going to get the providers, we connect successfully to our database. So just put this line of the adapter. Okay, so now we have the adapter, we have the providers. Okay, let's just go and get these details for the providers, the Google Client ID and Google Client secret. These 2 things here, we have to get them and put them in our environmental variables. So to get them, go back to where we have the providers, just click on providers, and then on the provider, click on Google. Okay, click on Google, and then on Google, just click on this configuration link, this one. So just click on this. So this one is going to take in, you must have a Google account. Okay, so if you have a Google account, it won't actually disturb. Okay, make sure you have you are logged into your Google account on top here, or it will ask you to log in. So come and click on this create credentials, and on the credentials, choose the one which has 0 auth client ID. This one requests user consent, so your app can access the user's data. This is the one we want. So click on that. Okay, and you can just change the name of the project here you are working on. Okay, here they just give you my first project, blah blah. You can just create a new project for this, but I'm not going to do that. Just come here and create the auth, and they are asking, by the way, be careful if you don't create a new project, let's start with by creating a new project. Actually, create a new project. Give a project a name. It turns out I have more projects. You have 6 projects remaining. Okay, still have projects I can create. So I'm just going to say this one is NextAuth. Okay, YT maybe. And then the name of the organization or location, just simply create. Okay, so that now you can just come on top here. They are creating it here. Come here and select this NextAuth. Okay, create here, click this NextAuth. So make sure you are in your project here. Okay, make sure you are in your project. You might just replace or create in the old project. Make sure you create a new project and then you click on that project and make sure on top here you are in that project. Then click on create credentials. Click on this client ID. Okay, so you see what they are saying. A client ID is used to identify a single app on Google servers, blah 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 blah. So they say to create an auth client ID, you must first configure your consent screen. So click on this configure consent screen. Okay, and they will ask most questions about your app. So the first thing, choose how you want to configure. Just click on external, click create app name. Okay, so here you can just say app name, click and just say maybe NextAuth app by JB. Okay, and then support email, click on your email, and all these others are they are not required. So simply scroll down. There is here the developer's email. You have to put in this one. So put in your email here. I'm just going to retype my email here at gmail.com. And by the way, all these details that I've just skipped here, you take your time and fill them. Like your logo, they show them on that screen, like your logo, the domain URL, and all that kind of stuff. Take your time and fill them. But here I'm filling the ones that are required. So this developer email is required. Save and continue. Okay, so this one we are done. Then on the scopes, don't add anything. Simply say save and continue, save and continue, and then done. Go click on back to dashboard. Now when you are back to the dashboard, click on credentials. Okay, click on credentials, and then on the credentials, click on create credentials. Click on client auth. Now they ask you here the application type. Choose web application. The name of this, you can rename this to maybe NextAuth app. This one, the name of the app doesn't matter. You can put any name there. Now here the most important ones are these two. Okay, the first one is authorized JavaScript origins. So here you put the URL of your app. This is for use with request from a browser. So click on this add URL. Just click here, go to your app here, get this localhost 3000, copy this link, come back here and paste it here, and you can remove this. So you have this localhost 3000 is what you put here. In production, change and put the hosted version link. Okay, in production, when you have deployed, you have to come back and change here. Then another one is authorized redirects URIs. Now when you go to Google, if you go back here, there is something they talk about configuration here. They say the authorized redirect URIs used when creating the credentials must include your full domain and end the callback path. Make sure for the development, if you're using localhost, you have to copy this the way it is. Localhost 3000 stroke API stroke auth stroke callback stroke Google. As simple the way it is there, just copy, come back, and then on this authorized redirect URLs, click on add URI and paste this one. Okay, the way I've done it there, just do it like that, then say create. So they will give you a client ID and a client secret. So simply copy this client ID, copy this. By the way, do not use my credentials, just use the ones that they have given you there. After all, this is a test app and I'm going to delete it after the video. So just like copy this, and after copying it, go in the client ID here and you can paste it. Just come here and paste it there. Okay, go back, client secret, copy this, go back here and you can paste it here just like that. Okay, so we have pasted all our Google client ID, Google client secret, we have them, all of them here. Okay, so as simple as that, click OK. So we have put in our fields there. Now we can move on. Next is setting up the callbacks. Okay, so want to set up this callback here. So if you just go to, when you go to Google Auth, you can just come here and search callbacks. Okay, you just search the callback and you see on top here they have the sign in callback. Okay, they have the sign in callback. So you see here this sign in callback, the sign in function callback to control if a user is allowed to sign in. Okay, so this sign in callback is the one which will give us this the user who is signed in. So just go back to our app. You can just write these callbacks. Okay, just like this. This if ends here, just like this, callbacks. Copy this. Okay, copy this and just come here on the under the providers, put comma and just paste the callbacks. Okay, just copy paste the callback and you see it is sign in here. Now the most important thing we want to get from here is actually the profile. Okay, the profile, that is the only thing we want to get from there. So you see I updated this and I only received the account and the profile. So here the two things we want is the account, so remove the account, and the profile are the two things we want to get from here. So the others, remove them and leave these two, account and profile. Okay, and then why we need the account, we want to check the type of the provider. Okay, so you can just go ahead and write the if statement. Okay, we can write here the if statement. Just remove everything inside here. We can write the if statement that if the account.provider is equal Google, then we can just go ahead and, for instance, console.log profile. Okay, so the data we want is inside the profile. Just console.log profile, as simple as that. Want to console the profile, so want to see the profile, and I also want to return down here, I want to return the profile. So you can just go ahead and inside this outside here, just say return profile, as simple as that. So I think that is the only thing we need at this point. Okay, so the next important thing after you have set this one, we are about to finish, guys, Don't get tired. The most important thing that now that is remaining that to do is setting it globally. Okay, so you're supposed to create the session, global session. So to use the session, it is very easy to make sure that in the whole app, you can see here on our app, we have this, the nav bar here. We want to know if someone is signed in or is signed up or is logged in. So to make sure that the user is globally, when you sign in a user, we want to tell the whole application that this user is either authenticated or not authenticated. We want to know the status of the user all the time in the whole app. So with that, we have to use context. Okay, we have to use context. So in the app here, I'm just going to create context, or you can create it outside the app or inside the app, whatever you want, it doesn't matter. Let me just create here a new folder. I'm just going to say context. So in the context, just create a new file called auth provider, okay, .jsx or js, any can work, rfc. Okay, so the most important thing we want is actually down here is to export. You can export the default function auth provider. Now this one is going to return, actually, okay, is going to return the session provider, and it takes in children. It takes in children, and let's say auth provider. So I just say auth session. I'm just going to say session. So there is this session provider from session provider. Okay, so there is this session provider. I don't know if I've written the right one. They just try to search in the NextAuth documentation if you can see it. Session provider. I don't know. Okay, I can see something here. So if you pass session provider, so the session provider is here. So they think session provider using the supplied session supplies you instance of the use session, blah 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 blah. So you see, we can use in the our app, get this session provider here. They just say here import. So we are importing session provider. It is what we are using here, and then you see here it takes in also the session, and then we can pass the session here. I don't know if it is necessary, so you can just pass here children, and let's also pass session, the spelling of session. So we have access to the session, and then we can say session, and we say it is session. Okay, we can pass in the session to be available in the entire app. So after creating this here, make sure you wrap this in the children, just like that. So after creating this, okay, we have now this auth provider, and we can go to our layout. So in the app layout, we can wrap everything in that session provider. So just come here, wrap everything here, just cut, not this one. I want to wrap everything in the body. In fact, you can wrap the whole body just like that in the auth provider, okay, from the context, just like this. Okay, so after doing this, it means that we have the session available in the whole app. Okay, it means we have the session available in the whole app. Okay, so this is good. Now we are just about to get to our UI. Okay, we are about to get to our UI. The only next thing we can just search about is the sign in function. So we have the sign in function. So we just click on sign in events. Okay, we are going to use this function to sign in, and you see they give us this. I want to see the sign in. Okay, so we have to call this function. Let's just see now. Everything is right now is set. Let's just see if we can we have any errors on our app so far. Use context is okay. So here in the context, where is context here? We make sure this is use client. That's why we created even a new file. So make sure this one is use client. Let's see if the error goes. Okay, so we have no errors right now. We are back in the app, so the setups are all done. Okay, so the only thing we need is I should click on this button here, sign up, and then it should open up a Google Auth, whereby we can click and choose which person is logged in or what. So we need to work on this button here, this sign up button. Okay, so what I just need to do, I'm just going to go to the navbar where I have this function sign up. I have this button here, is not having anything. So we have two functions, the sign in and the sign out function. From I can just say on click. So I want to say on click. Okay, on click I want to call a function called sign in. So you see this sign in function, you can call it from NextAuth. Okay, and then you pass this function, and then you can pass in the provider. You see, you have to pass in the provider, and in this case we're using Google. Okay, so on click you pass in this function, sign in function, and then you pass in the name of the provider you are using, and in the provider you are using Google. Okay, and that should be it. This function you should import it from the NextAuth, just like that. So now let's refresh the app. Okay, we are having some errors. Button on click, of course we have to make this one use client since we have on click. So just say use client. Okay, and let's see if the error goes away. Okay, yep, so the error goes away. Now what I want is to click on this button. Okay, so you see it is rotating. Okay, and it takes us to the consent form. And if you remember very well what I had written on my app, NextAuth app by JB, if you remember, those are the things I filled under the consent. If you remember here, you see the name of the app, I had named it NextAuth app by JB, and it is picking this information from the Google. That means the client ID and the client secret, they are working, and they are bringing in this, and that's why they take you to accounts.google.authentication. They bring you this one where the user can actually, so if you had put the logos and other things, they would put them here. Okay, let me just click on this one. So I have clicked on JB Web Developer. Now it is just getting the details. Okay, is getting these details. We don't know where it is going to put these details, but for now it goes back to our app and nothing happens. Okay, but let's check on our console. Okay, I want to go up here. look at this. Look at this. So we have a lot of stuff from here. Okay, if you look at very well, we have all these details that we're having email, email verified, name, picture, and we have given name, family name, local, and all these kind of stuff. Where are these information coming from? Okay, where all this information coming from? So all this information is actually coming from the route. So if you remember very well here, when we said when someone sign in, we have the account. Remember when we provided the account here in the nav bar here, I'm just trying to connect the dots. You see, you provided the account is Google, sign in with Google here. That's why on this function here, we are checking the account and the profile. So on the profile is the one which is having all the details. So these ones are all the details. For instance, we have these. So you say if the account provider is Google, go ahead and console log profile. So everything it has consoled here on the console is the profile. Okay, so you can see it has consoled down all these as the profile. Okay, so now how do we get access to these data anyways? Okay, so on any of these, so this let's first stop at this point. Let's go to, for instance, on the home page. So on the home page, where is it? Page here. How do you access the things that are in session? So first thing we can do is we're just going to come here, and on top here, I'm just going to say cons. Okay, I'm just going to get data, and we can name this to session. Okay, and we are going to get this one from use session hook. Okay, so they have this use session hook. We can actually ask, what is this use session hook? Let's just go inside here, the NextAuth, type in here use session. I'm showing you all these things here. So use session, and that is the client side of getting things. You can see here it is client side, yes. Server side, no. Okay, we are going to look at the one of server side in a second. But when you just look here, they say this, it says the use session hook, React hook, in the NextAuth client is the easiest way to check if someone is signed in. So they say make sure that the session provider is added to your app. So you must make sure you have the session provider wrapped through the layout, of which we did. So now after have done this, we just have here data, and they're also renaming it session, and they also have status. Okay, so we can just come here. We are getting this. Let me go ahead and say also status, so you can also get status here. And on this status, this console.log data, in fact session, since we renamed it session, this is the way of renaming. If you do something like this, it means originally it was data, but we are naming it to be session. So if I console.log session, let me see if I have anything in session. So go back to our app and make sure you have to make it a client component. Okay, just say use client. Okay, and we are going to look also at server way of doing things. Okay, let's just go, this error must now go away. Okay, so we have here, let me go to F12, that is I want to go to the console, and I see if I have anything in the console, and I have an object, guys. I have an object. Let me open this object. In the console here, I have an object. Let me try to increase this. Okay, so look at this. I have an object which has expired date, and it has the user. Okay, and look at what you have on the user. We have the email, we have the image and name. Okay, that means I can access this email, I can also have this image, and I can also have this name. Okay, so let me just go ahead here, and where we have the name here, I'm just going to say here you put to be session. Okay, so I want to use the session. Now I can say session dot, so on the session there is a user. Okay, and we can say on the session there is a user, and if a user is there, then we can get the name. Okay, and even so, let me just go now. So now the name is coming from the session, so you can see the name is JB Web Developer, and you see the name has changed there. We want to go ahead and of course use the email also, so I'm just going to do the same thing here, Ctrl C on the email here. Let me put session.user.email. Okay, just like that. So we have the email also there. Okay, now we can put the image. Of course, we'll get a problem with the image, but I just put the image here. So when you put this image, change here, and I'm just going to paste also this one here. Okay, this is image. Of course, since we are using the image component, we are going to get a problem. We get one error, and the error, let me just maximize. So this error is a common error if, for instance, and it seems to be we have lost the user, cannot read under properties. Let's just first see if this user is available in the console. And you see at first the user is, we can have the state. So when the user is being loaded, okay, you can see here they're saying undefined. That means either the session time has ended. Okay, so we can just first say here if the session is also there. So we just use the question mark, and even here question mark. This is to say if the session exists, then do this. If the session exists, do this. Okay. Okay, right now we don't have anything, but moving on, what we are just going to do is to first check is to see if the session, so you see the session now has populated. If you check back on top here, the session now has come, the object is now there, the user, you can see the user have come, and the problem we have right now is that the host name, they are trying to complain about this image. The host name, this is not configured under images, so simply copy this, just simply copy this host, Ctrl C, and go into your config file. So go in the next config here, and inside here put images, and then under images we're just going to say domains. Okay, domains, and just put it in this array. Just do this, just go in your next config, put images, and inside here you put domains, and then you can rerun the server. Let's say try to reload, you see if the problem can go, but most places you have to rerun your server, and then let's see if the server is still running. Okay, the server actually ended, you see here. They just run the server, npm run dev, Okay, so the app is starting again. Okay, everything looks okay. Now we'll just reload in a second. Just go ahead and reload here. Now another thing that they gave us, meanwhile as this loading, that another thing that is very important in this is the status. So you can see here we have this status here. So now this status can be of different types. Okay, so when you load the app, this status here is the one which tells it has 3 values in the status. If you go back to Mongo, to NextAuth, in where we have the client, where is it? This status here has 3 values. It has loading, authenticated, and unauthenticated. It has 3, and they talk about it here. By the way, here they will just say session, it has undefined, null, and it can also have data. When the session hasn't been fetched yet, data will be undefined. In the case it failed to retrieve the session data, it will be null. In the case of success, data will be the session. Okay, then for the status, it is enum mapping 3 possible states: loading, authenticated, and unauthenticated. Okay, and we can use that to determine so many things. Excuse me. So we, first of all, if it is loading, we want to show it on the screen. So I can say, if I can write something, if status is equal to loading, okay, we can just return a div. So this is why you can use a spinner. So you can use a spinner so that they are loading. So you can just say here h2, and in this h2 I'm just going to say app loading. Okay, so I'm just going to show something like this. If the status is like this, okay, and then you can just go ahead and also, where we have this card here, okay, we can show if the status. So you can also write another if here. If the status is equal to, and the values are 3, we have authenticated, unauthenticated, and loading. So if the person is unauthenticated, we can just go ahead and show them. So here you can say return. Okay, so we can just return here, and we can return or say div. Okay, we can return a div, and a div of the button. So we can just put a button of sign in. Okay, we can put the button of sign in, and then we can just now ls, of course it will return this. And even here we can say, if it is loading, for it we can just tell it to show this. Okay, and I think we can also use it as a return. Let me see, just say return like so, so that if the app is loading the data, we can actually tell. And after configuring everything, look, all my details have come here. Okay, so we have my image, you have my name. Let me zoom in, guys. This is nice. So this image is being pulled from Google, and if you go to my Google, this is the image I use. You see, this is the image here on my profile. You can see there. Okay, so they are pulling that image from Google, this one. And now we have this JBuild developer. This is the name actually I use also. and this is my email. Okay, so it is putting correctly the data. So one thing we want to show, if someone is signed in, we have to change this button to sign out. Okay, because the sign up button, we only want to show it if a user is not authenticated. So we want to get these ones. Okay, and we sign this person. We say if he signed in, we show this one. If he signed out, if he's not logged in, we show sign up. If he's logged in, we show sign out. And this is very easy. So we simply go to the header. So just go to the header. Where is our components? Components navbar. So while we have this button, we want to show it on a condition. Okay, so first of all, let me get the data from the session. So const, okay, I can just get data. In fact, here we could just get data, which is the session. Okay, and we have also status. Okay, and this is from use session. Okay, make sure this use session is exported on top here from NextAuth React. Okay, so make sure that one is well imported. Now, instead of showing this button, we want to use the status. If the status is equal to we have to wrap this really okay, I think we have two actually. So we have to say if status, okay, is equal to authenticated. Okay, if it is showing like this, then if this is true, we should show the button which says sign out or log out. Okay, else if we can't show this one. Okay, if someone is signed in, okay, if someone is authenticated, okay, that means is signed in. When they say authenticated, means signed in. One show them the button which says logout. Okay, and the function here we are going to call is sign out. Okay, so we have another function called sign out. Okay, so here we just call this function sign out, just like that, to sign out this person or to kill the session. And when the person is signed in, we show them if it's not authenticated, okay, we show them this sign up. So let's see which button we are going to see. So you see now we are seeing a button of logout. That means actually this is true. It is authenticated. If you check the status, let's just console.log status. So you can just go and say status. So we can console.log status, and we can just go on the console here and we look at status. Okay, so if you look at status on top here somewhere, okay, status, okay, so you can see here the status is saying authenticated from the navbar. It's saying authenticated. So when it is authenticated, let's click on this button. Okay, even here on this one, we want only to show this card if the person is authenticated. If it's not authenticated, then we should also show them the button, the sign in button, this same concept here. So let me first go to the home page, do the same concept. Okay, so instead of showing this this card here, so inside here, instead of showing this card, so what I want is I want to say if, okay, so if status, Okay, if status is equal to authenticated, if this is true, then what I want to show is this card. I want to show the card that is having session details for this person. Else, what I want here, what I want is to show, let me just go down here. What I want to show is the button. Okay, let me cut this button. You get, I want to show the button for the sign in. So sign in, and of course outside here we could show the sign out or what, but let's just show this button sign in, and we can also call the sign in function on click. I've already showed you that. On click we can call a function called sign in function, sign in, and it gets from NextAuth React, get this function, and this function we pass in the provider, and who is Google right now. If you are using GitHub, you can pass in GitHub or anything just like this. So if you go back, this button will now disappear and we only see the card. So let's see, if I log out, click on logout. So if you click on logout, just going to take a second. Okay, is here uploading. Wow, so you see now it turns into sign up, and even this one types in sign in or something. Let's try to sign in. So click on any of these ones. Okay, so I've clicked on the button. It takes some seconds sometimes, okay, to call that call the function. Let me hope I clicked it. Let me make sure. Yeah, so I clicked. So now it is rotating, so it is going to take me it is uploading. So you see, this is good for the purposes of keeping the app where loading, so that is so the people that the app is loading, and then the data now comes, the other one disappears, the card comes. Now this is working, everything is working so well right now. We're having all these states and we are seeing the functions we are using. Okay, you're seeing the functions we are using. And let me just copy this and I put it in the blog. So after this, you might not have this in the blog. So somewhere in the blog, just say, so create your homepage. Okay, homepage, that is page.js. Okay, page.js, and you can put this information. So just to make sure that you have all this code here. Okay, so now let's just say if, okay, let's just say if we wanted to protect a route. Okay, let me just create a dashboard here. Let me create a new folder called dashboard. Okay, and inside the dashboard I want to create a new file. Guys, spelling of dashboard. So here I'm just creating dashboard. So like you can find you have a dashboard in your project and you want to protect it using NextAuth. So let me just create here a page.jsx. Okay, so I'm just going to say RFC, and here is have the dashboard. So h2 protected route. Okay, dashboard, just like that. And now here we can just do we can just come here and do the check. Okay, we can just do the check here. So remember, we can use session. So you can just say const. Okay, I can just use const, and we can have the data, which we can rename as session, and then we have also status. Okay, is equal to use session. Okay, so it use session. Now what I want is to get if the status, of course we said if the status is equal to loading, what we want to do is want to return, okay, want to return an h2. So you can have just the loading spinner or something. I want to return a div. Okay, and inside here let me put h2 saying up loading, just like that. I want to do another if statement. Just copy this and paste it down here, and we say if the user is unauthenticated, and just move this and put here is, you see we have unauthenticated. Now we can return redirect, so we just say here return router.push, so we can push them back to the sign up page. If we had the sign up page or to the home page, let's just create a sign up page anyways. Let me just create another page here, page, and just say auth, and inside the auth let me say sign up or sign in fact, and then inside the sign in let's create the page .js x, and whatever I put in the navbar is what I'm just going to put here. So just go to components navbar. So I want to copy the logic here in the navbar, more especially for the buttons, this one. Okay, or you could just put only this sign in button, not the sign in. Yeah, this only this button. So let me just go to where is sign in here. I will say RFC. This is our sign in page. Okay, for if someone is not authenticated, I can just put class name here, hscreen, like that, flex, justify center, and item center. I'm trying to center this button here, guys. So this one, let's get it from get this sign in function from NextAuth, and of course you have to make this one a client component. Use client. Okay, so now when we go back to the dashboard, if someone is not authenticated, we can say router. So let me just get a router here, const. I think you can also use redirect. I think there is another function called redirect. Let me see, redirect. I don't know. I just use the one we know, router. So let me just go here and create a router. So you can just say const router is equal to use router from next navigation. Okay, make sure you're getting this from next navigation. Okay, guys, this use router, they changed it in next 13, is no longer from next router but is next navigation. So after creating the router, now we can say router.push, and we can push something like you go to auth sign in I don't know if that is the routes. The word sign in, guys, and today my spellings are very terrible. I'm trying to rename this. Okay, I don't know, it seems like not working. Let me first close it. So this is a very terrible spelling here. I don't know why it is not accepting to rename. Okay, just leave it like that. You can just name a good one. Me, I'm just going to put in exactly the what is here. Auth Sigin, just like that. Okay, so I want, if someone is not authenticated, I want to push them to this. They shouldn't see even the dashboard. Okay, so if we just go back to our app, okay, so if we try to now access dashboard, okay, if we try to access the dashboard, let's see what happens. Make sure the route is there. Use session, we did not get the use session here. Make sure you get the use session. What they saying? Use clients. Don't forget, use session is a hook, so it has to be use client. I always forget those things. Okay, right now they are loading the app. You see app loading. This is nice, I like it. So you can have this while you are determining. So someone now, you can see the protected route, okay, because it's authenticated. So let's log out. Okay, and the app is loading. Okay, and see this, we have been just forced to go to the sign up page. Okay, so let's just try to access the dashboard again. So just type in dashboard. I don't know if you are looking very well. So I've typed in dashboard here, and we are back. They are redirecting us back. So they load the app, they check everything, they find you are not authenticated, and they are pushing you using this line here. We are saying if the status is unauthenticated, just push this person back to the sign in. He cannot access this information. Okay, so this is how you can use this the authentication. We have been able to get the results. If I say now sign in, so if I just say sign up, whatever of these buttons I can click, if you sign in, okay, you see that here it will turn to logout in the nav bar. Okay, it will try to log in. Okay, so now you see logout. So if we go back to the dashboard now, go to the dashboard, the app is loading, they are determining, and you see protected route dashboard. We are able to see the protected route since we are logged in. If I log out, okay, if I log out, you see app is loading, they are checking, and then they push you to the sign in page. So we are able to protect the routes and do everything. Let me just now go. There is one thing that we are not doing. If you check our database, however much we are playing with the data, there is nothing in the database. No any user, nothing. Okay, so what we want is, while we are just getting this, if you remember, if you sign up, okay, and you go to the console, okay, if you go here in the console, they are determining whatever is being determined, authenticated, blah blah, and logout is being seen. So if we just click go to the localhost 3000, which is our home page. App is loading. Okay, guys, always use the status to avoid errors. So we have the details here, but this user we have here, we don't have this user from the database. We are not saving this user anywhere in the database. So the purpose now is to save this user, get this user, the details we are getting here. Okay, we want to save them into the database. Want to save them into the what? Want to save them into the database. Okay, so how are we going to do that? So we go back to our route. This is the user. Everything is here on the profile. Okay, now this takes me to how we perform the CRUD operations in Prisma. So if you go back to this documentation on top here, there is where actually I put that you can perform the CRUD operations in Prism using the codes. I put them somewhere here. Okay, let me try to zoom in so that you can zoom in here. Let me remove even this so that I have the full page. So on this full page, let me just come here. So you can create a new user. So here to perform CRUD using Prisma, so you perform using this. We have these 4 big methods. The first one is Prisma user find many. So this find many function is used to get all users from the database, and this works for MySQL, MongoDB, Cockroach, all the databases. You use this function, find many, and this one is the name of the model. If it is posts, it will be prisma.post. If it is the user, prisma.user. Find many, it will bring back all the users. And then this one, prisma.user.create. So this create method is used to create a new record in the database. Then we have the update method and we have the delete method. Very simple methods. If you check here now how to use them, first of all, you have to have the Prisma client. After having this Prism, you can go ahead and get the details, and this is how you can do it. So to create a new user, you have to await prism.user.create method, and then you pass in the data. Okay, you pass in the data, you pass in the email, name, and password, and all the details that you want to do. Okay, and if you continue, I had done already this one somewhere. So on the NextAuth here, on the sign in function, this is the function we have access to the account and the profile. We ask if the account provider is equal to Google. The first thing we have to do is checking if this user already exists in the database, because the person who is already existing in the database, we do not want to save them twice. Okay, so we have to first perform if the user is already existing in the database, and we can use this line of code. Okay, so we can check existing user inside here. Okay, here we can check existing user and we await. And here, by the way, you can try a try catch block. Anything can go wrong here. Okay, so inside here we can first check the user. If the user exists by using this function Prisma, remember we already have used Prisma here. It is here, so that's why we have no errors. And this user is the name of the model we specified in the Prisma here. So if you just go to the Prisma schema, we have the user. Okay, schema user model. Find unique. This is like to find something that is unique, or to find to return. If you hover here, they give you the like the syntax, and inside here you say prisma.find unique, where email is equal profile.email. Remember, on the profile we show that we have access to the profile. Okay, so just say email is equal profile.email. Okay, now if the user exists we simply want to return the user. There is nothing else we want to do. If the user exists here, we can just say the user already exists. Okay, if the user does not exist, so let me just write this if statement. I want to write this one of creating the new user. So we have this one and we close it here. Okay, so I'm just come and write the if statement here. So down here I can say if, okay, if existing user, or if user exists, existing user, okay, if this person who's trying to log in is an existing user, we can just say console.log. Still we can just say user exists, and this one can be user already exists in the database, in the DB. Okay, else if this user is not existing, we want actually at this point create a new user. Okay, want to create a new what? So you can just say prism. So I'm say prism.user.create, and this create function takes in the data. A second, it takes in the data. So there is here this. Wait a minute, it is here, I guess, and then there's no need of this one. So what we are doing here is const new user. So want to create a user, so you can just say const, or you don't even need, if you don't want to return the user, you could just say simply say await prism.user.create. Okay, you can just say this const new user is await prism.user.create, and then we give it the data. The name is profile.name, email is profile.name .email, and then image is profile.image. Okay, so if we do this now, we can just go down here and return. After running this, we can just go and say return new user. Okay, and you could also just return a response here. Okay, so if we now just go, let me sign out, log out. Okay, I'm logging out. Okay, the app is loading and the user has gone out. Click. So right now we also here we can console.log new user. After before here we can also say console.log new user. Okay, want to see this new user, we can just simply actually console, not return. So let's just sign in. Let me first refresh the app. Okay, and this is from the session, by the way. So sign up. Okay, so someone is signing up. So at this point it is just going to run the code. Let's just open here. Okay, let's just open here and see, and loading undefined, things are just like that, undefined. Okay, so things, everything is okay, and somewhere we are having the user console there, and we have undefined blah blah. Okay, so it seems like everything is working. We have signed in. So just go and check in our database. Seems like nothing has happened. Let me reload and see if, and by the way, we could just also go to our this. It's still, I think it's still there, this Prisma, and you can just be seeing from here. Okay, and this here is fetching rows in the table. Yeah, so this one is loading faster than this one. That's why you can actually use Prism. Always just use this Prism Studio, and the studio is running here somewhere on one of these terminals. Let me show you. Yeah, so the Prism Studio is running here. So you always run the Prism Studio, and you can see in the Prism Studio we have the user, we have the ID, we have the name, email, and then we have the image, okay, and then even the accounts, we have one accounts, and even the session has been populated. You can see we have the accounts and we have even the session. Okay, so this is really good. We have the user in the database, you get. So we have the records, we can use these records in any way we want. Okay, we can modify, we can add telephone number, we can have as many records as possible. So here you can see we have the user in the database. At the same time, we have this user in our application. Okay, so this is good. We have seen how to protect the routes. I'm just going to show you again. So if you go to dashboard, I show you can protect your dashboard. If someone is authenticated, he is able to see the dashboard. If we log this person out, okay, then he is going to be redirected to the home page automatically, where you can sign in again or sign up. Okay, so that is really good. Now I'm just going to end the video at this point. I can see the time has been so long, but thank you so much for watching this video. I know it is a long video, but if you have reached at the end of it, thank you so much. Thank you for watching this video. Continue supporting me to create more content. If you have not subscribed, please subscribe to our YouTube channel so that we can continue making content. So I'm just going to make 2 more videos about NextAuth. You can see this one has been a long video. So I'm just going to make another video adding on to this one. And what we want to add in that one is the marked authentication. What do we mean? I want to add when the person is an admin or is a regular user. So I want to add in the role-based authentication on top of this one we have done, so that if someone signed in and is a regular user, is taken to another part or to another user dashboard, and if he's an admin, is taken to the admin dashboard. Okay, and then another thing we're going to add is to actually work on this is to look at what we call callbacks. So for instance, we have the session callback, okay, and then we also have the JWT callback. You get it? So we have these callbacks, and it will be good to understand how they work. For instance, if you want to add more things in your database, so for instance, if you want to add in more fields in your database, how do you add in a phone number? How do you add in the role? So in the next video you're going to create is going to be working on the role based, okay, and then the second video we are going to make will be about the using the credentials, the sign in, and the sign in with email and password. We shall also and add it on top of this one. We see how we can make a very up-to-date application. Thank you so much for watching. See you in the next one.